Welcome everybody to the next CPD session, which we're going to be focusing on, which is equality and diversity related. And we're going to have a slight more focused approach on transgender awareness, something that is definitely being fed back through from feedback from staff. We've seen an increase in support required for candidates over the last 2 years, with a lot of different kind of associated issues, additional support they've needed. So I think it's really important that we have this open conversation and set a baseline for some context about how we can support people moving through this stage of their life. Can everybody see the screen? Yeah, brilliant, thank you. As always, guys, online safety etiquette is there. We're all used to that, which is good. I thought I'd just put this caveat in for now, especially around the topic that we're going to be discussing. So the CPD and the subsequent discussions, actually, because I want people to be involved and join in with this where they feel appropriate. The topic could pose some challenges for individuals to talk about and or address their opinions. So just please be reassured on here that you're open to contribute, but you're not being directly asked unless it's been pre-planned. I'm not going to pin you down and start asking personal opinions. We are all SSG employees. We are all SSG culture and values are on board with those. So my assumption would be that when we step out of our uniform, we're quite similar in those views and values anyway. But again, it is a subject that we will never shy away from, and we will always kind of discuss, but we'll never pin you down on things. First task, it's going to be a slightly bit different to what we've had previously today's sessions, but just take a few minutes to consider the following, okay? What does the word itself, transgender, mean to you? Okay, so what does that mean? So if that is quite a simple answer for you, right, contemplate what other vocabulary would you associate with the word. So if you're quite clear what that means to you as a person, as a professional, great. But then what other vocabulary would you assume or would you know would be associated with the term transgender? So feel free to offer up some answers after you've had some time to think, or start to use the chat box and we'll discuss from there. Okay, just 3 minutes. So again, the primary is what does it mean to you from your position, your point of view, and then looking at potentially the vocabulary that we may well associate with the term transgender. So I've got some from Jenna. Yep. So Jenna's put down identity, might well not living your life not as the gender into which you were born. I like that one. It's good though. Mighty Vine. Thank you. Transitioning from one gender to another. Okay. And then being comfortable. That's a good word to use there. Being comfortable within themselves. Identity not necessarily corresponding to one's birth sex. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know who wrote that. Okay, that's good. So we're looking there then, a lot of explanation around what we are classing as a gender, what you were born gender, as in the sex that you are, whether it be male or female. Okay? So understanding what those types of how you identify, sorry, I'm just going to turn the alarm off, is an important thing as well, because we're now moving into acceptance in our society around individuals rather than people from groups and cohorts, which is fantastic. Okay, so what do we aim to do? So my aim, looking at this, again, I'm not part of the LGBTQ plus community myself. I've had to do background reading on this. I've had to open up conversations and research certain elements in order to provide what I think is the basic understanding for us to work from. So I thought it'd just be a starting point for my aim to be raising awareness really about the issues which surround trans people. And that may not always just be in education where we are now, but it could also be the workplace and or the society as a whole. So I'm open for this to be kind of wider than just SSG 9 to 5 kind of conversation. So the main outputs that I'd like from you guys at the end, just the 4 really, is be able to explain what is meant by the term. We've had a good go and there's some real good understanding already there. Identify the importance of tolerance and understanding. Okay, that is down for the B. C, identify definitions which are associated factors. So we've got LGBTQ plus, we've got such a wide variety of factors involved in that, but specifically linked to trans people or transgender, the process of that. We'll identify a few of the factors. We're not going to cover everything. Apologies, I'm not going to have all the answers, obviously, but what we are doing is we're starting to identify this as a key focus area of our LGBTQ provision within our SSG. Okay, so as always, give yourself a starting point, give yourself a kind of out of 10, whether it be in the chat, whether it be on a piece of paper, something to be able to identify that you have increased or decreased your understanding or confidence really in your knowledge. Okay, brilliant, Val, thank you. Matty, as always, great, thanks. So D, so best practice, yeah, there is, I'm very grateful there's going to be one of our own speaking and providing best practice, which will hopefully activate some thoughts of your own and look at that, which is great. Generally 7s, okay, that's good. And again, there is nothing like we stipulated at the start. If you have not worked in provision where people as part of this community have accessed your provision before, then you would not have come across the needs and the support, which is different to somebody who may well be heterosexual. So it's good that we talk about this. Okay, so the term transgender then. So what is the legal? As always, I try to kind of go to, okay, so what is the legal and what is the more definitive, the more responsive for our community? So transgender is an overarching kind of term that we would class as an umbrella. And it is what you guys have already said. It's about a person who doesn't identify or an expression does not match the sex that they were assigned at birth. So it's even down to now looking at open conversations in different forums around whether people are rightly given their gender identity at birth, because up to and including now, it is genetical. It is down to being born with physical genitalia, which makes you male or female. Okay. The Cambridge Dictionary, very similar, but quite softer in a way, because we're talking about feelings within the definition in the dictionary. We're talking about someone who feels that they are not the same gender. Okay, and I thought that that was quite important, really, to identify the difference, because they identify, or it's an expression of, well, it doesn't actually give you keywords which are linked to the emotional difficulties that people are going through. And I think that that is something that we definitely have seen at SSG. So the tolerance and understanding, a person's sense of themselves needs to be the focus point. So when we are looking at this, and we are identifying people who are maybe struggling at the minute and going through a rocky patch, we want to then be able to discuss what's going on in their lives. If they start to open a discussion around being in the trans community or looking towards fulfilling transgender, all the way through to being given a different certificate which recognises their change in gender, we need to make sure that it's about them. So there is no rules or guidance around what you must do with Danny Burke when he says something, or because I am an individual, same as Jenna is, same as Jeremy is. And we have to understand the whole topic and subject area. We must kind of remain professional. We cannot be assuming that a person is okay in the position that they're currently in their life and they're not struggling, or that the way that they want to be known, their gender, that the noun to describe them, even down to, in the past, a legal name. Well, actually, I prefer to go by this name, and this is what I am suited for. Because our job, let's face it, is to make sure that our candidates are safe, they are engaged, and they have the chance and the opportunity to be the best that they can be in whatever success is to them. So that is our role, isn't it? So staying professional is obviously going to be key to that. And what I don't mean is for 1 second that none of you are professional, but avoiding a discussion with somebody, that could also be deemed as not being professional. Okay, so if you were in a position where you felt slightly uncomfortable or out of your depth, maybe not experienced enough or a little bit tongue-tied with certain things, then that's where you would proactively reach out left and right to each other and then into your management to seek advice. What we wouldn't do is take over, because the relationship being built between you guys on the front line and that individual candidate is the most important and powerful thing we have at SSG. Okay, so we would empower you to then go away to then continue to do the good work you do in your job. Okay, we need to then think about gaining an understanding of what is appropriate and a confidential discussion. Okay, if support is needed for that, then fantastic, we can do that. And that goes all the way down to time, the place, who is in the room, who is in earshot, are we recording, are we writing, are we pre-meeting discussions, are we setting it up formally, is it informally? There is 100 different variations, but we need to be fully aware that we've got to go in there as the professional person, and we've got to be in there confident, and we've got to be in there with an understanding of what we can say and what we can support, and then when we need to pass on to other people. Okay, so that said, I want you just to take 2 or 3 minutes, and I want you to feed back this time. Okay, what kind of questions or topics would we use within these discussions? So this bullet point here, where we're talking about how we're going to support somebody, whether we are meeting them for the first time, and we want to understand how they want to be treated and terminology and so on and so forth, how they associate themselves, how they identify in certain situations. What kind of questions or topics would we use within these discussions? Okay, so just take a few minutes. Right, and this is the bit that I want some sharing if we can. Just while you're thinking about that, if you would be happy just to share what you think you would throw in there, just raise your hand. That way I'm not unprofessionally picking on somebody. Cheers, Matt. Well, so you find yourself in a conversation in the right place at the right time. It's all confidential. What do you think the kind of questions you should be or you would use, or what kind of topics would you involve? Thanks, Jeremy. 1 minute then, just one more minute. So, TV, Jeremy. Cool. Okay then, Matty Vine, do you want to kick us off then?
Yeah, something that I think we could have done, like, because of the ones we've had in the centre, is often asking like how comfortable they are sharing it with people. So like, obviously that they'd sort of make it aware to staff, and a lot of the time the students in the group would pick up on it as well. But I think just for a bit of clarity, there might be some times where the person who is transgender would maybe feel comfortable in having discussion within the group, and it could be like embedded into sort of some of your lessons. So I think that's something that you need to sort of get out there quickly, so there's not too much bickering in the background and rumours going around. So just
I think that's a really good contribution, Matty. Just to identify to everyone in the group. So Matty Vine is one of our most experienced 16 to 18-year-old tutors currently at the Bedford Centre, and has and continues to support Emma Graham with a lot of well-being concerns and quite serious safeguarding concerns, which I could rightly say in Matty, may have been born from situations such as dealing with either discriminatively from family and things like that to do with their gender association. So I think that's really good, because it links back to the third bullet point around assumption, and around sometimes we may see somebody who is quite clearly openly dressing as female, going by a female name, but have we had that conversation even though they are still recognised as male? What is their self-opinion and their situation right then and there? Balv, sorry mate, you were next on the list.
No, that's fine. I'm learning loads. I don't know much about it. So first of all, thank you, Danny. I think the question that I would ask is, what pronouns would you like to use, and what would you prefer for us to call you? Is it her, she, him, he, like along those sort of lines?
No, I totally get that, and I think this is the forum to say exactly things like that, because if you don't identify either, how are we going to be communicating sensitively to how they identify? Is it they, them, as opposed to he, she, and vice versa? So I think that's really good, and possibly you may well hear from our guests later on about how that is kind of quite organic in some respect, but if it's not done from word go, it could be a negative impact. I could see that. Yeah, that's good. Mr. Gardner.
I was going to mention exactly the same thing as Bal, actually. So yeah, do they identify with being addressed as he, she, or they, or something else? And yeah, and I think that could probably lead to further discussions that will sort of arise organically out of that. But I think that could be a good start point. And then I think also it helps to set the intention, doesn't it? About this is going to be thoroughly inclusive, and it's kind of on your terms as well. Same as any candidate, really. If they can feel that the classes and the courses on their terms, I think it makes for a totally inclusive, culture. So
I agree. And like you said there, it's something that is you guys naturally do within what I see, what Jen reports back to me, and what we know happens every day is not just the forced inclusion kind of thing. You guys care, and SSG does care about that individual person within that group, and having that from the offset, shows that nobody is perfect at SSG. None of us are, but we are who we are. We are inclusive. We are diverse ourselves, and we are open to understanding you as an individual. We are not going to assume that just because you fall within a community, the LGBTQ, that you are going to want this. We're not going to assume that. That's really good. EG, I think you had your hand up, and somebody else has. Apologies, I can't see your initials or name, but I'll come to you in a second. Do you want to go?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to raise a point because when we started working with both like our young people and our adults that are either going through transition or have gone through the transition, it was really like nerve-wracking of trying to like have these conversations and not knowing like, are you saying the right thing? You don't want to cause offense, you want to try and build a relationship. But from the experience of speaking to these to all these people, whether they're, it doesn't matter what age they are, the real common outcome that I'm getting from these conversations are that, one, if we were to say the wrong thing or use the wrong name, use the wrong pronoun, as long as we are not doing it deliberately, they're okay with that. They are understanding. And also, secondly, and this is more for our younger age group, which, this year we've seen 2 students that are transitioning. It's really challenging for parents. So when you're going through sort of that IAG and enrollment and welcoming stage, that I picked up on a parent that felt very uncomfortable. So not only are we then supporting the student, but also having to support the parent as well. But one of the worst things for that student was that the parent was speaking about them as if they weren't even in the room, and they just want to have that sort of be treated just the same as anyone else would be. So being able to steer the conversation to bring that young person into it as well is really important. And then, if we're in a place where our knowledge, our confidence, that we can support not just our candidates, but also the people around them as well, and sharing awareness, I think that, we could really strengthen here.
I think that's a really good point, and something that I've not picked up on in this session. Might be something that, depending on feedback and see how we move forward, it could be an additional little unit that we look at around how do we support the outer circle of somebody going through something. And we could do that quite topically around somebody going through, say, a trans community, or it could even be somebody going through a period of bullying in some form of their life, or any other topic. How do we then support the people who are supporting them? Because I think that is something that we will only benefit from if we do that. If we support families and they're on board with us for our younger candidates, as Matty will testify to, the engagement levels will go up, the punctuality, the attendance, we're all on the same page. No, it's a really good point, thank you. There was one other person, apologies, I can't see your name, who had your hand up. Do you want to still contribute?
No, it was me, Dan. It was me, Danny.
All right, mate. Yeah,
Jeremy really covered it. I was just going to say that, I agree. It's good to have this discussion, but ultimately, this person will be treated exactly the same as someone with a lisp or a speech impediment or a limp or anything, and as tutors, I don't think. Well, I was just trying to say that I can't understand how everybody will be treated individually no matter what the situation is, and this to me is exactly the same as someone who has got a severe speech impediment or they've got something about them, and it wouldn't be treated any differently.
That's exactly why you're excelling at SSG, Mike, because what we do is these communities, we identify equality, we identify diversity, and the difficulty has always been with myself through my career is in order to be able to prove that we are outstanding at that, we then have to box people, and we have to then categorize them, and we have to then be able to put them in this target or focus group or cohort, and actually no, we're outstanding at this practice because each person is individual, and if they are coming through as a stereotype heterosexual white male, they are still treated as Danny. They're not treated as that stereotype, they're treated as the individual, and I know that happens from you guys. So it almost becomes a kind of a reverse of what we do, where we have to say, well, let's look at our BAME target. Well, why do we do that? Our pathways of provision are inclusive to all, they are aimed at all, and it doesn't discriminate in any way. And then when you come to the practice of that, if you are trans, that's perfectly okay to us because that person next to you is not, which is perfectly okay. So I really agree with your statement there, Mike. That's really good. I've just brought up the screen share there. Hopefully you can see it again, because our guest, if she is happy and ready, I will take the screen down in a minute, is going to be Miss Hannah Cobb. Now, Hannah is obviously prepped for this, and she's willing and happy just to have a little bit of a discussion around the following three areas, really. She has worked extensively with one of our candidates who's a long-term candidate of ours at SSG. We've seen pretty, I would say, the full transition over a couple of years, maybe a bit more. Wanted just to identify a few of her positives that she came out with, what she thought were strengths, how she handled certain situations, how she approached it, and then also about reflecting whether there was anything, any strategies she would change or anything she would do different in there. And then again, open to some Q&A. So if you guys had got any questions about best practice, she is more than happy to have a discussion. And she's nodding and I can see her. So go for it, Hannah, if you want to have a chat.
Yeah, I guess the positives would be that I learned so much. And I kind of wish that I'd done a bit more research, I guess, but then at the same time, it enabled me to ask Brie as many questions as I wanted to almost and learn from her in the flesh, which was great. So I learned so much from Brie, and all the backing stuff that they go through, all the appointments, all of the different stages of the process that they go through. And I got to build that relationship, I guess. And Danny told me earlier that he remembers me doing Brie's makeup during a break one time because that's what Brie wanted. So yeah, that sort of stuff. Those are the positives, like building that relationship and learning from the person as you go and as they go, and allowing them to open up about it as well.
So I'm right in saying, obviously, because you were compliant, Hannah, you'd done your E&D, your click and online, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And how much of that was helping you with Brianna?
A little bit. It doesn't. That sort of stuff doesn't tend to cover transgender stuff, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think like you're doing yourself an injustice there, because not only did you learn, so to speak, as you were on there, you had the confidence to go through experiences with Brianna. I think that's what you're trying to say, is that you were, and Matty Vine summed it up great right at the beginning. It was, do you know what I mean? You find out from the offset, how do we support you moving through? It's not what does SSG do for you, because they need to buy in just as much as we do. So I agree. What would you change then, apart from maybe doing a bit of reading, you said, or a bit of background, but is there anything?
I think the only thing, apart from doing a bit of research and maybe trying to understand it a little bit more, I probably would try and let Brie be a little bit more independent, because I think she did become a bit more reliant on SSG. That was her safe place. And she would come in and ask me to do her makeup numerous times. I often had to be like, we've got to learn, let's put that to one side. And there was a time when she wanted to come in wearing like a full like girl's outfit rather than wearing like baggy boys' clothes. So we put some music on for her and let her do a catwalk, and that sort of stuff was great. But there was times when that became too much, and we needed to actually be like, look, this is lovely, but we need to do what we're doing, and we're here to support you, but you need to make sure that you're going to the right places for that. And then, you know, we're here for the learning part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And I think that is a really good point to make up, because what you're looking at there is, yes, the support and the infrastructure is there for our candidates. When they leave us, because they will, have they retained the right habits? Have they retained the resources that they can apply themselves and apply it to a situation? And if they are using individual people, as we have all been used in this platform and continue to be used in the early stages, if that is the solution to what they're going through, that is only short term. And the long term is, it's not going to help them by associating with an individual, which you're right, I think did. Now, that was no fault of your own and no fault of Brianna's, far from it. But again, you find yourself in a position where we still have to be professional and confident to say, like you did, it's not really the time and place for a catwalk. At no point does Hannah or SSG imply or go anywhere near the fact that this is not the time and place for a transgender person catwalk. It's not associated. We wouldn't let Jenna walk in as a member of staff and do it, and we wouldn't let another one of your candidates do it. So why would we let somebody who is trans do it? So you're right, it's that balance. Yeah, good. Okay. Is there any questions? Has anybody got any questions or anything you want to ask Hannah while she's giving her time up?
Just something from me, if that's all right. Sorry, Balv, I didn't put my hand up and I've just rudely got ahead of you there.
You crack on, Charlie.
Yeah, two things. So just on the back of that, Hannah, just it's quite really interesting to hear you talk about that. Certainly something that I've previously struggled with in terms of finding the line of too much encouragement in comparison to, right, actually, where's the professional line? So that's really interesting to hear about that. So thank you for sharing it. Second point was just slightly similar in terms of something that I've experienced in the last 18 months, using enrolment forms, completing monitoring disclosure over the phone, where you're completing that with the learner and it's not the learner completing it themselves. I've made mistakes of just going straight in and asking questions on the monitoring disclosure form, such as, right, what's your sexual orientation, and very quickly learning that the response that you get from that in comparison to going through and explaining it, why we were asking this, it might seem quite self-explanatory for other professionals, but for certain candidates that might be alien. So that's something that I've learned over the last 18 months, to just differ how we're asking those questions on monitoring disclosure. And I just thought it's quite an interesting point to share. Don't know if anyone's found similar, but I'd be happy to kind of have that discussion with you if you've question in the chat, why are we asking them, Matt, that in enrollment? So yeah, good question, Matt. So from my perspective, and anyone can come in here and correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why we ask monitoring disclosure questions at enrolment, if we have 5 transgender candidates with us throughout the program, and all of them end up being withdrawn from provision, and there's no reason because of it, it's something there that we can, the purpose of it, monitor and disclosure, is to monitor how we're going about our equality and diversity. That's my perception. Danny, interrupt me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you've done right. That's how we would use it here. We are also obliged to do it. We have to do it for funding, for contract funding, and we're also obliged to be able to know, to be able to say, which is where E&D kind of contradicts himself in the fact we are equal and we look at diversity within our thing, but then we're expected to be able to box and categorize people and put numbers against it, which is, again, that's my personal professional kind of standpoint. But you're right, Charlie, that's why we are asked to do it, and that is also why the society is catching up and forcing change and forcing more formal elements of forms, whether it be a medical form at a GP and things like that. Changes are afoot if they're not already in place. So I've noticed briefly on a couple of forms, but they may not have been filtered down into operations yet, where the selection is now growing. And well, at least it's there. It may not be the best terminology in the world, but at least there is an option. But yeah, good point. Anything else, Charlie? Did you say you had two? I'll come to you after Bow, Matt, if that's all right.
No, that was that. Just to kind of conclude, yeah, if anyone wants to speak to me about that, because it's something that I
really good,
certainly
yeah.
18 months ago, I was all over the place with it and was just getting different reactions and was questioning myself, like Matt's just questioned there, like, why are we even asking this? But then actually looking into it in a little bit more detail, just your language and how you ask it is important. So yeah, drop me a message if anyone wants to speak about that.
I think that to finish that off, Charlie, it's how you frame it, isn't it? You're framing what you're going through and what you're doing and why. Bow, sorry, mate, you've got your...
No, that's fine. So I just wanted to ask, my knowledge on this is 0 to none. So apology if this is a really naive question, but Hannah, what sort of challenges did Brianna face? Because Danny said that she went from pretty much beginning to end with SSG. So what sort of challenges did she face in terms of society, in terms of being in a class, in terms of all that sort of stuff? What sort of things did she have to sort of go up against?
Yeah, I think Brie was really lucky. I think when you said challenges, I don't think she really faced that many. Like in the classroom, everyone was so accepting. I think because she's been with SSG for a while, even before I joined, so everyone sort of knew her anyway. But probably the main thing would be that she had to obviously go to a few doctor's appointments, hospital appointments to talk through the transition and that sort of stuff. That's probably the main challenge. But other than that, she was pretty, well, I think we were really lucky with Brie because she was very open to talk about it, and sometimes it's a bit too open maybe, but we were very lucky with her that she was happy to talk about it and discuss it with you. She was quite lucky really in terms of the challenges. I guess the pronouns would be another thing because people wouldn't know he, she, you know, but I guess with that, something that I've learned in general as well is that if you do get it wrong, it's okay. They don't mind exactly what's already been said, but don't get all flustered about it. Don't be like, oh, sorry, I'm trying to correct myself and get ready, because that's then what makes it worse. Just sort of correct yourself and then move on. That's one of the things that I think she found quite difficult, but everyone was so accepting in her life. I think she got really lucky, really.
Okay, so what was another question is like, what's the process? Could you talk about the process, but what is it? So when you identify as a female in this case, is there a doctor's appointment you have to make, or what do you have to do?
Yeah, I think you start out by going to the doctors and talking about how you're feeling, and then you do go through a proper testing regime to make sure that you are in your right mind, and you are being legitimate in what you're saying, because I suppose you could just be making it up. So you go through a load of tests. Is
that like psychological?
Yeah, psychological tests. Yeah. How long have you been feeling like this? You know, what your past relationship's been like, family history, that sort of stuff, and yeah, how are you feeling in your own right mind, I guess. So he went to a lot of doctor's appointments, and then also hormones was the first thing. So you go through all the appointments. Okay, yeah, you are being legit. You do want to transition. You go on the hormones first for a year or so, and then so it's a long process. It takes a long time on the hormones, and then they book you in for surgery. But that's after a whole year of hormones and checking that they're okay, still want to go ahead with it, all that sort of stuff.
So what's the time frame from start to beginning? Is it, you said a year? Was it a year, did you say? Or?
So it's a few years, yeah.
A few years, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking several years.
Oh, right, okay, cool.
Yeah, and there's also now discussions around age and position in life to actually start. And so think about it as not just an ongoing process, but it's an ongoing stage. And that stage allows you to go to the next stage, which is ongoing, and then stage,
okay.
and then ongoing. So the final one is the physical element. So 2/3 of it is psychological all the way up through, which is brilliant, but it is also very frustrating, I'm sure, with Brianna saying, and for us as well, because our job is to support and educate, isn't it? Let's face it. And as much as Hannah is one of the most caring of people, to actually listen to frustrations from somebody who no longer wants to have to shave their face repeatedly, because the treatment costs thousands of pounds. It's something that we have to try and support them to box in their cell, put it in that see-through box. You're here with us, let's move on with this now, and we'll pick that up at 2:30 or on your break or something. Very difficult to manage, but Hannah did really well. Is that anything else, Val? Sorry.
No, that's it. I was just curious.
Brilliant.
So thank you to Hannah and yourself for answering.
Mr. Chivers, do you want to go next, mate? Is he still in, or has he dropped out?
Is that me, Danny? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, no, I was going to be controversial, Danny, but I thought better of it, so move on to Emma.
Okay, right. Well, again, as long as it is appropriate for the environment, we like to have open challenge.
Okay, I'll ask then, Danny. Shall I?
Go on then.
Okay, we're talking about how we treat everyone equally, which is very important. I had a transgender person on a course 2 months ago. It didn't even cross my mind to have the conversation about those things because I just treated her the same as everyone else. I just think it's bizarre when the education standards, so I'm not saying SSG, are preaching all the time about treating everyone equally, yet the first thing we're asked to ask people is to give themselves a label.
Yeah.
By filling in a tick box. If someone phoned me up and said to me, "What's your sexual orientation?" I think I know what my reply would be. Yeah. And I just find it's bizarre. Then I think it's a conflict. I think as much as I understand you have to do it, and I understand the reasons you're saying, but do we really sit there and then say, right, how many white straight men over the age of 40 have stopped our courses? How many, bisexual women under the age of 25 have dropped off our courses? I don't think we do. I think it's a box ticking exercise from government.
Yeah, well, I think that having worked, as you know, in several different environments, I do it for SSG because of our culture and our ethos and our values, because as we've already discussed, we're individuals and we push on that way. We do have to do certain things. We have to go through certain hoops, and it's my job to minimize the impact of what we're about. So it very rarely comes down to anybody really, because I kind of ring fence it because I am of the same ilk and have been for 20 years. When you start looking at previous places where you've got 6,000 students and you are looking at that, they will openly challenge why demographics are low in this area if the community is high in that certain thing. Again, we could go for it for weeks. I think the way that we qualify and quantify our learners is spot on. Because what we do is we do what we have to, and then we do it the SSG way. And
I think
what we want to do is categorise and label and call. Do you know what I mean? We would never want, and if it is happening, then it's accidental, and we're open to feedback. If anybody thinks that maybe we are going over the top with certain things or we're doing it too much, then yeah, let us know, because we're getting much more efficient with our data and information that asking once should be enough for most things.
But wouldn't it be nice, Danny, to see for me to improve as a tutor and everyone else? Wouldn't it be nice over a period of say 2 years? Who are the top 5 socioeconomic groups, however you want to call it, that are the most prone to dropping off our courses or failing our courses? Because then that then is really, if we have to collect the information, which I'm not a fan of, obviously, then at least we can then say that, okay, right, we have a problem with people where, you know, from a certain part of the world where English is not their first language. We have a problem with people over the age of 55 because of other issues. Then we can actually start targeting our tutoring to improving in those key areas. And I just might think we might be surprised at the results.
Perfect. No, I like that. That's exactly what we've been talking about for several months, couple of years, and it's getting to the position now where we are of that ilk. We are there, and we've actually got people on the front line like yourself, Matt, saying, right, okay, I kind of get that, not fully on board with the reasons why, but let's turn it around and let's use it to support and help like we do with everything at SSG. Yes, I can't give it you tomorrow, but
no, that's fine.
when it comes to 21, 22, it's literally going to be click of a button, no one doing any work. It will be information that's just there to be able to say, oh, that's like you said, that's interesting. That will definitely tailor different things. And we hopefully you're seeing some of that without knowing it. So Lisa and the team trying to tailor courses around people in their current employment career and their pathways, working with job centres around maybe their position, not so much age, but that is on the horizon because of certain demographics that need it. So good. Jen, sorry. And then I'll come to you, EG, after.
I was just going to say that from my experience, having known quite a few candidates actually who are transgender, some people have come in, they may have disclosed it in enrolment or they may not have. Some people choose not to, and then it's never ever mentioned again. You know, they are called Sarah, they are a she, they are Sarah, and it's never mentioned and it's never brought up, and that's absolutely fine. But then you have other unique cases where people like Bree, she started with us as Bryn, and she worked with us for a long time as Bryn. So it was probably more of a challenge for everybody else than it was for her, because we had to get our heads around, right, now she is a she, now she is Bree. And quite often we made slip ups and we would laugh about it and we joke about it. And I think we just have that openness with her. So I think absolutely what Matt is saying about why have we got to make a big deal about it? Why have we got to ask all these questions? Actually, it's all down to the individual and what they want and what they need. Somebody like Bree, actually, she did need us to make a bit of more of a big deal out of it. And she wanted that. And I think she needs that reassurance. And as Hannah was saying, she saw us as a very trusting, secure environment. And we became her friends in a way, you know, because we saw her transition. And we had to have that conversation with her to say, what would you like us to call you? You know, what is your name now? Whereas we've had other people come in and it's never been mentioned. So yes, I completely agree. It's that, but it's down to the individual. And I think this is what this whole conversation is about. Just be open and honest with them and say, right, you know, what would you like me to call you? What can I do for you? If they say absolutely nothing, let's just carry on, then that's what we do.
Perfect. Yep, brilliant. Emma, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, it was only just off the back of some of the questions that Balv was asking.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say that although some of our candidates that are transitioning go through the sort of full cycle of having an operation, you can sort of like say that you're a transgender woman or transgender man without actually changing anything. So you don't have to go through that whole process. Some don't want to go through that process because of it's just their decision. It might be finances, it could be anything. But it's just, I just wanted to point that out. And then my final point, sorry, is, and this is maybe something for another time, but one of probably the biggest problems that we've had this year with our current students is that we've not had the confidence to, I don't want to say defend, I don't even know what the right word is, but like some of our younger candidates have a lot of questions because they might not have been around someone that's transitioning before, and a lot of the questions are around sexual orientation. And I don't know what the right answer is here, but I feel like we need to have the confidence to either say, like, shut down the conversations because that young person or whoever might not want people to be talking about it, or creating awareness of the actually sexual orientation has nothing to do with to do with transgender. But that comes down to obviously the people not maybe knowing about it, not experience it, knowledge and things like that. But what we don't want to do is shut down conversations at SSG and then go away and maybe say something out in the public or in employment in the future. We need to be able to help people understand what sexual orientation and transgender is.
I think just very briefly, we split the two straight away, as you would probably imagine. So your sexual orientation, the activity around that is different to how you identify as in a person and a being. But that should come through our pastoral topics and our units that we roll out through different tutoring elements. And it could well be something that, like society, we should evolve, constantly be adding and drip feeding in. It may well be that we look at the expertise. So if we were going to be learning how to change a car engine, I wouldn't be doing anything more than setting up, because the next session would be a mechanic who's a specialist who would show you how to change a car engine. And likewise, when it comes to topic of delivery, there's only so much you can do unless you are in and around or experienced within that topic. So it may be that we should look at a future investment or a future relationship building with specialists within the LGBTQ+ community. So that's good. Thank you. Charlie, you got your hand up, mate.
Yeah, just conscious of time, but I just wanted
just to let everyone know, sorry, I've messaged Lisa for the next session to be pushed back 15 minutes, just because I thought it was going well with the discussion.
Yeah. Kind of linking in with that, actually, Danny. Just referencing the meeting that myself, you, Lisa and Laura Townsend had about a month ago following the Sarah Everard death. And this group discussion now personally is empowering me. It's I'm finding it really interesting hearing everyone's opinions, and I can see we could sit here all day. So I think what we should do, because we didn't actually organise another meeting, Danny, but maybe what we should do is get that penciled in in the next couple of weeks, because what we found in that meeting was it was such a good opportunity to come to a virtual meeting where we don't have any specific topic, or just let the conversation flow and offer these different opinions that we've all got. Because like Lisa made the point that if we were going into an office environment or a classroom, you'd just openly speak about current affairs and different opinions such as this, but you just don't get that in the virtual world. You just I speak to nobody, and it's like this is so important. So
totally agree.
I just think it's something. Let's get that penciled in, Danny. I think that'd be really important.
If you could, next time you speak to Lisa, and I'm not sure if Lisa's in on this, but just flag it with Lisa, get it booked in, and we'll add it to as another topic, and that could be the leader for that topic. So for people who are not aware, it skipped past you because you've been so busy. It was an open invitation for like a coffee meeting, which means that it was an informal get together for people just to do what we're doing right now and voice opinions about current affairs related to kind of safety on the streets and how we promote that and things. And I think it was a good format, and we're going to try and push that through So when you see that come up on your radar, please buy into it and log in just for 15, 20, 30 minutes of your time. Okay, if I could just, if there's any more questions, if not, and it comes to you, just pop it into the message room, the chat room, and I'll answer them after the session. Okay. What I want to do, just share my screen quickly, and then finish off, because again, we've extended it. I'm aware of time with Lisa. Okay, can you see that? Okay, so the basic I looked at when I was reading through it, there was a lot of associated factors that fell in when discussing around the trans community and somebody who was associated as transgender, which I thought that I wasn't 100% sure of. So I did as usual, I just researched it a little bit and I come up with some quotes. And I thought that if I did that, that may well give you a basis to then start from and feel confident and then find out more as and when you needed it. So gender variance was something that I wasn't 100% sure of. Okay, and this is a behavior or gender expression by an individual that does not match masculine or feminine gender norms. So it's the variance of in a stereotypical, you are male because you have masculine traits. Okay, not just the actual physical or your feelings, it's the way that you are acting naturally. Okay, and that variance is in between, and it can be an unconformity, and it can be quite confusing to a lot of people. So talking about gender variance with people may well be because they are in a period where they are feeling and demonstrating more feminine traits. Does not mean that they identify themselves as female or that they are going to be a transgender male to female. And this is where the opportunity for individualization is why we can't just have a rule book and a guidance book on things, because there is so many differences. So transitioning, so what is transitioning? And Hannah's kindly identified, and we've talked here about one of our loved candidates really for the transition that she has gone through. So it is basically to adopt permanently the outward or physical characteristics of gender. Okay, so with the example that we were given, that person was not necessarily transitioning when we first met them, because they were so unsure, they were so sheltered in what they truly believed and what they wanted to be. So they were not permanently looking like she wanted to look. It was almost like she was defending her true self because of fears and anxieties and things like that. Eventually, when she went through all the mental support that the GPs gave and the tests, that's when that transition started. And they started the transitioning where we actually, as a community at SSG, started to positively reinforce Brianna coming in as Brianna. And I remember clearly Jenna having the conversation with her outside saying, if this is you, then this is you, and that is fantastic. People won't know unless you accept yourself and go through that. And it was a really turning point. It was really good. Non-binary. Okay, so this is denoting or relating to a gender or sexual identity that is not defined in terms of traditional options. Okay, so the traditional element of male, female. Somebody may well now choose to say, I do not relate to either of these two. That is the term that they would fall underneath. Okay, it is a very kind of medical term, quite an official term, but it is something that we're now starting to hear a lot more in our society, community, and education as well. Trans rights. So trans rights are there as an individual through human rights. Okay, so the Equality Act falls underneath that. If they want to go under gender reassignment, then that social transition is certificated. And that process that you go through actually is acknowledged and rewarded. It also means as well that that initial conversation that we start to have enables us to protect their rights when they're with SSG. So if I identify as a trans person, male to female, technically, and actually as is my right, I can still access the male toilets, and that is what I am going to do. Okay, so we would need to support that situation. Likewise, we would need to support and make sure that the right is in place for them to use gender neutral toilets, which there is huge conversation around in the educational industry now because of the safeguarding practices and the procedures, and also the outward world coming in and accusing inside an establishment. Transphobia, I would imagine that you guys would have a good guess at that. It's basically a dislike or a prejudice, okay? And it is transphobic to write a policy that doesn't include an awareness of their needs. The key one I think we've talked about around the psychological and also the physiological distress and the symptoms. And you may well pick up on these kind of things, which I've got the source of this in the appendix for you to see. This is come from a network which has got specific understanding and knowledge around the community. And what they are saying, when I read through this, it was really eye-opening. And I think that if one or two people on this format, if Matty looks at it, Matty Vine and Emma Graham, and we can actually look at those conditions there, they're quite they're scarily accurate to what we have seen. Okay, so if we have somebody who isn't outwardly going and facing, but they are struggling with how they are identifying, we may pick up on some of these signs and symptoms. Okay, and it might be worthwhile just having a note of that at a later point around the kind of the symptoms around this linked to medical conditions, and then also the behaviour, which is quite impulsive, and then again anger management issues. Okay, so gender dysmorphia, spit my teeth out, dysmorphia. Okay, they are experiencing a difference between their sex and gender. Okay, and it's very medical again. All right, this is something that they would have on their records, and this is something that if they were under the age of 18, possibly, I'm not sure, but it may show an AHCP. Okay, so if you come across that term, that's what it basically means. They are not 100% identifying with what they were born as. Non-conformity, and this can slip down the lower levels into children, which is why I've put it in there. This is something that they are saying is a natural rather than nurture. It's a nature thing. Where we sit with that doesn't really matter if they're brought up a certain way or if they feel like they're born a certain way. But this is looking at the effects, the patterns of how they are living and how they are acting as opposed to their gender. So the stereotyping of a young boy growing up in primary school, well, actually, they don't want to do all those things. That doesn't bring them enjoyment. That doesn't bring them satisfaction. They want to, where possible, wear school uniform that identifies as female if they are a boy. And that comes down to primary schools, junior schools, secondary to deal with that. We don't have to deal with that because we're over 16, and also we don't have the uniform issue. Intersex people. So this is people who are described who are born with sexual anatomy that does not neatly fit into male or female. Okay, so they are different and they differ to transgender people, because they are choosing, and even though they may not feel like they've got a choice, they are actually changing themselves through surgery or hormones, whereas intersex people are born that way, and they're born with a different genetic makeup or physical parts of their body, which is a combination of. So always like to leave with some sort of support for this. This website here takes you straight through to a website link, which is very, very clinical, very stale because it's owned by gov.uk, but it is a signposting tool which will take you straight to a number of advice columns. Okay, it takes you then to instantly to websites which can then support people. So as always, for signposting, we want accuracy, efficiency for us to be confident. That is a website that you definitely can use. Okay. The second one is a bit of a clip, a video clip. This video clip is about Age UK. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it. Tell me if you can or you can't.
I said, well, there must be something wrong with me.
We can hear it, Danny, but it's proper choppy.
Sorry. So what I'll do here then is I'll come out of sharing the screen just to talk. So that clip is a very quick summary about what Aged UK are doing currently across the country and looking at an ageing community as part of the LGBTQ and how they are supporting them as well. Because I think in my personal experience, as well as my practice, I naturally gravitate to younger adults and to the lower end of the age scale, when 4/5 of our candidates are adults and most are well into their 20s and above. And some senior aged people may well be struggling with this as well. So I definitely didn't want to start typecasting this kind of topic to an age-related situation, because there are support networks out there for people who are aging in society as well. Okay. Finally, as you will see when you go on to, apologies, when you go on to the slide, that there is a series of links for you to be able to access where I looked at. Okay, so what I was looking forward to my information, and hopefully they'll be able to support you as well. But it goes without saying that our support for people is one-to-one discussions. Okay, making sure that if we have that relationship, to have a form of dialogue with our individuals, be it staff, be it community members or candidates, we can then signpost and we can then advise to go to the GP or the above links if needs be. Okay, just very quickly, go back one, sorry. These are the links that will take you through to the certain sites that I was using myself. It's not extensive, so please feel free to obviously widen your own search. And in the feedback that comes back to you, the feedback form off the back of today, as always, we do use that feedback. So if you are looking for something specific, or if you're looking for saying, no, that was fine what you did, let's do that as a refresher or so on, please write that in there. Okay, that just leaves me to offer out now if there's any questions, any generic questions. No. Hopefully if you were to go back then and look at the previous kind of outcomes, you may be able to score yourself a little bit higher maybe. If you find that you're coming under, lower, touch base with myself, email, give me a call. I'd like to say meet up, but that's a few more weeks away maybe. But looking at how you identify definitions, looking at the importance of tolerance and understanding, and hopefully looking at what the term transgender is, at least we've started to break down some barriers that you may be feeling. Okay then, guys, well, I'll leave you there. I'm going to contact